Um, all right, to remember my password. Sorry, I should have gotten this one up before the meeting. Um, that's what it is. To manage my events. Okay. Perfect. Sorry guys for the delay. I was trying to look for something. Good morning. Hope you all had a great weekend. Thank you all for joining me on this lovely Monday. The income limits, I don't think for the Florida bond have been updated. I checked last week, but it is May 6th. They usually come out in the end of the month. And they probably would have sent me an email, but I'm just going to double check very briefly here to see if they've updated their income limits yet. If not, it should really be any day now, any week now that they do update them. I know that Broward County themselves has updated their income already for as of May. And see here, yeah, Broward is pretty much still the same. So we'll wait for that to come in within the next couple weeks or so. So the Fed meeting elaborated that they were not going to hike rates further and instead keeping the Fed funds rate steady where it is and probably for a longer period than most expected. So last week's Fed meeting, there were some experts pretty much saying or thinking that it's possibility that the Fed could hike rates. And they pretty much were firm saying it is very unlikely that they will hike rates. Since the Fed day on Wednesday, we have seen mortgage rates come down drastically, and that's not only because of the Fed funds rate staying where it's at, but also because of what they said in the meeting that people aren't noticing or really talking about. So they stated that they're going to slow down on their runoffs on their balance sheet. Why is it important? During COVID, the reason why rates were so low at that time was because the amount of bonds the Fed bought at that time. So during COVID, they were pouring a lot of money into bonds, the US Treasury, mortgage-backed securities. They're buying trillions at a time. And ever since then, they've started to let those run off of their balance sheet. So what happened was they were buying up all the supply in the market, and you're keeping those rates low. Now, as they're letting all of those all of those bonds mature, and run off their balance sheet, what happens is there's not a lot of people buying mortgage-backed securities to keep rates low. That's why you heard me talk about the reason why the difference between the mortgage rate and the U.S. Treasury was an average of 300 basis points or 3% when it historically has always been 200 or 2%. And there was a difference of mortgage rates were 1% or 3% higher than what the Treasury was. So if the Treasury was at 4, you saw rates at 7 when historically they should have been at 6. That's because the Fed was running off a bunch of money that they had already put into bonds on their balance sheet. Well, they announced that they're actually going to slow down on their running off. So they were doing about 60 trillion with a T per month. They announced on Wednesday that they're going to minimize their runoff tremendously down to only 25 billion with a B per month. So this means that they'll be buying enough supply to help bonds and rates for the foreseeable future. This is why we've seen about 4 straight days of green in the market. They're basically buying up excessive supply to borrow against. And I think that that's going to help us now in the future, at least kind of level out rates where they're not in that 300 basis point range. They're more so in the 200. So if you see the US Treasury at 4.5, average mortgage rate should be at about 6.5. So that's going to be good news. I don't think that means that rates are going to start coming down drastically because there's some other things that are still in play, like the Fed funds rate, like jobs and stuff like that. But speaking of jobs, another reason we did see rates do well last week was a below average jobs report. The BLS jobs report showed only 175,000 jobs created in April, which was below the estimates of 243,000. Unemployment rose from 3.8% to 3.9%. And if we start to get in the fours moving forward, we can see the Fed react quickly and rates continue to come down as well. So it looks like I don't even think that that's a crack, because I think we've been around 3.7 to 3.9 for the last couple of years. It's as soon as that number hits 4, I think is when we're going to start to see bonds react well, people start to freak out, stuff like that. ADP's employment report, which is for private company payrolls, showed 192,000 jobs created last month. Job openings have also hit a 3-year low. So job openings haven't been this low since 2021. Case-Shiller's home price index for February showed home prices increased 0.4% month over month, and they're actually up 6.4% year over year. With elevated rates, we have not seen a slowdown in home prices, which is huge because, and I'm going to talk about purchase apps, the purchase applications are actually really bad this year. The Federal Housing Finance Agency, FHFA's home price index, reported a 1.2% jump in home prices from January to February, with prices around 7% higher year over year. Now, remember, Case-Shiller is the gold standard of appreciation. That's the one that we typically pay attention to. FHFA's home price numbers are based strictly on homes within the conforming loan limits, since FHA is Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So they're doing their home price index based off of the loans that they do, which is anything within the conforming loan limit and below. Case-Shiller is going to look at the market in totality. Purchase apps decreased the previous week by 1%, and they're down 14% from this time last year. Refinances also fell 3%, and they're down 1% from last year. Refis actually made up 30% of applications nationally, but even then, for both to be down year over year is a testament to how slow this year has started for mortgage applications specifically, and people just being on the sidelines and waiting. Lastly, Zillow has come out with a non-exclusive buyer agreement. The agreement is where the buyer will have a short-term 7-day non-exclusive commitment that only covers touring activities. That's it. Now, it's kind of a smart strategy from Zillow, and I hate to say it. I try to be as non-biased as I can. I really dislike Zillow and what they stand for, but this is a relatively smart move because what they're doing is getting the consumer to do the agreement and then pitch that to a Zillow agent as a lead. Then the Zillow agent has to convince the buyer to sign with them long term. It doesn't mean that that short-term exclusive agreement is going to cover protecting or working with the buyer at closing or during the transaction. It's literally just to tour the properties that they're interested in touring, but it basically makes the buyer feel like, oh great, I don't have to commit long term, until they meet with the Zillow agent, and the Zillow agent pretty much tries to schmooze them, does whatever they do, sell them, right, date them before they become exclusive. That's all that is. It's still going to transfer into a longer commitment, because their non-exclusive buyer agreement is literally just to cover a tour of a home, be able to access the lockbox and stuff like that for them. Okay, that's pretty much the news for last week. A couple different points, and then I want to kind of hear from you guys on what you guys think and any scenarios that you've had this past week. YRD is having a Capital and Cocktails mixer next Thursday. The flyer should be up already. No, it's not up. The flyer's not up already. It'll be up today. But basically, it's going to be about small business financing. So if you're a realtor, trying to figure out how to get small business financing for your business, or helping your clients that own small businesses being able to get financing for their business and leverage that, right? There's a lot of power in being able to go from being, just a real estate agent or a realtor to being PA or having an LLC where your deposits go into. That's how you're going to build business credit long term and be able to use that money for different things. Being able to, if you want to do these DSCR programs and stuff like that, think about it. If you're a business and you're a real estate agent, and you're going to buy a property as an investment property, that's within that wheelhouse and that realm for you to be able to do so. So just being creative. We will be bringing in somebody from out of state. His name is Ernest Epps, and he provides a lot of value. So May 16th, you guys will be getting an email to register for that event. There's going to be food included as well, and it's going to be at Dania Point, if I'm not mistaken, by Dania Beach. there was another thing that I wanted to talk about too. Yeah, hometown. The last thing is pretty much just hometown heroes. It is May, so just make sure that clients that you have that have been waiting, now's the time for them to get their updated pre-approvals going, and pretty much start getting ready to look for homes to be able to close in July. Now's the time to start getting them in the motion because it may take them a week or two to get their documents in for their pre-approval and all that stuff, and then it's going to take another couple weeks to be able to go under contract, find the property that you're looking for, and then by the time you look, you put 30 days on that contract, and that's in July, and that's when those funds are going to be available. I think that they are going to go by quickly. I don't think as quickly as last year. Last year was about 2.5 months. I think maybe 3 months, 3.5 months, we'll see all the funds being exhausted. I don't see a lot of buzz around it this year like I did last year, but I could be mistaken. It could just be, people in the back just waiting for it to come out, pretty much. Does anybody have any questions, any sort of scenarios or anything like that that they came across last week they want to talk about?
Hi, Mike. Yeah, I have a question.
Hey, Yolanda.
How are you? I was trying to remember. I know last year with Hometown Heroes, the criteria was they had to live in Florida and work in Florida, whether it was 2 weeks or 2 years. Now I'm hearing that they have to be of course, a full-time Florida employee for the past 2 years. Changed.
You kind of cut off there. You're hearing what? I'm sorry.
I was hearing that. I was hearing that. Remember how the Florida Hometown Heroes initially was, where they had to be a Florida employee, whether it was for 2 weeks or 2 years. Now I'm hearing for this upcoming year, they have to have been a Florida employee for the past 2 years already. So I was wondering, is that something new?
The guidelines haven't changed. From my understanding, their guidelines haven't changed. All of the stuff that they sent over to us has been the same. And it's been consistent. So I could tell you from experience that the servicer Lakeview has given a lot of pushback to whether or not somebody is considered a Florida employee or not. Just because of what I see on the back end post closing. I can tell you that they're giving a lot of pushback. So there may be lenders saying, hey, in order for us to minimize the risk so that we don't have to purchase this loan back, this is what we're going to basically be looking at and make sure that we require. However, the guideline from them pretty much states that as long as that person is going to be a Florida resident by the time of closing and working at working for a company that has a brick and mortar in Florida, they would qualify. So this is where it's been getting a little bit tricky on the back end, right? I had a client, he worked for Philips, the light bulb company in sales, and he works in the southeast region of the US. But he didn't technically have a brick and mortar that he went to. He worked completely remote and reported to their headquarters, which I think was I think it's up in Michigan or one of those states up there, right? And we closed him, Hometown Heroes, because he's a Florida employee. Like he lived in Florida, and he worked in Florida, and this is his realm. And we did get pushback from the investor because the company didn't have an actual brick and mortar present in Florida. Now, mind you, this is not somebody that just relocated from where their headquarters was down to Florida. He lived here before that. Like he was renting in Florida. All his documentation was in Florida, which was the argument that we made to the investor. But you could tell that they're kind of getting they're pushing back a little bit on residency specifics. But I can tell you, as long as that person has a brick and mortar that they can to in the state of Florida, even if they are technically remote, they will still qualify, even if they're only here for a couple weeks.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Kalia said, refresh my memory. Can a buyer use Hometown Heroes in another down payment program like City of Lauderhill? So, yes, the way to do it is because Hometown Heroes doesn't subordinate, the City of Lauderhill would have to agree to be third lien position. So these are all second and third mortgages, right? So your first mortgage is always going to be your FHA conventional, that'll be standard. Hometown Heroes will be the second mortgage. And then the third one would be the city or the county down payment assistance if they're willing to subordinate. Miami-Dade, they subordinate all the way up to seventh lien position. They have no problem doing that. It just depends on the city and the county. If they also are okay with subordinating to the lower lien positions, then you can stack. Any other questions? No? All right, y'all. Well, anything that you need, we're here for you guys. Give us a call. We'll be able to help you all out. If not, if we don't speak, we will see you all next Monday. I feel like next Monday is next Monday is the day after Mother's Day, so it's not a holiday. But we'll see you all next Monday.
Oh no, I don't have those. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, would you do pre-approvals for travel nurses who live in Florida but are looking to get pre-approved for properties in Georgia? You would need somebody that's licensed in Georgia, Javon. And they're most likely gonna have to do it as a second home, because if they're living in Florida and they're working in Florida, unless their contract is in Georgia, and that's why they're trying to move to Georgia, then that's a little bit different. But if not, they're gonna have to do it as a second home or as an investment property. Because you're not gonna be able to have a contract in Florida and then living in Georgia. Can self-employed qualify for Hometown Heroes? Yes. Self-employed, you don't necessarily need to have your brick and mortar. Basically, you need to be registered on Sunbiz, and your CPA will basically your CPA has to state that you are a full-time you work your business full-time. That's it. So you just need a CPA letter from the accountant stating, hey, so and so works their business full-time and does 35, 40 hours a week or whatever the case is. And as long as you're registered on Sunbiz, you can qualify for Hometown Heroes. No problem. All right, y'all. Have a good one. We'll speak next week, okay?